We have to really talk about being proactive rather than reactive. Obviously, prevention is cure, but early detection is not prevention. There is something called iatrogenesis. Iatrogenesis is the leading cause of death in the modern world.
What is it?
So iatrogenesis is actually...
Meet Andy Lew, an Australian wellness pioneer with over 30 years of experience and many best-selling books to her name. A renowned TV presenter, certified wellness coach, and host of the Well-To-Do podcast.
Andy brings her expertise from Beverly Hills to our show. Get ready for transformative insights from one of Australia's leading voices in holistic health.
Would you say that education is probably one of the biggest components on making people healthy?
I think yes, because we got so excited about what modern medicine could do that we forgot about breast implants are indeed the inflammatory driver which create a cytokine storm. So it really can't be called BII anymore. It needs to have a new name.
In today's world, you're getting very young women. They're getting these breast implants. What's your message to these teens?
I'm about to get emotional. I've never seen an unattractive person that smiles. It's just impossible.
Right.
That's our responsibility to
Right.
be healthy and to have better communication and self-talk.
What is like one fad that you just see that people have to watch out for?
Oh gosh, the biggest lie and fad is calories.
What do you think is the true issue with America being so sick?
I guess
Welcome to another episode of A Healthy Point of View podcast. This is your host, Sam Tejada. As you know, we bring experts in health, wellness, and beauty from all over the world to talk about what's going on in today's world. Today we have an Australian transplant here in the U.S. She comes all the way from California here to South Florida to talk to us about the different things in health and wellness and what we're doing to make a change here in America and maybe even globally. Today we have Andy Lew. Andy,
Wow.
how are you?
I'm so happy to meet you in the flesh, been following you on the gram.
On the
We
gram.
often talk on a Sunday. I always say it's Sundays with Sam. Now I think of you on that day, but you're such a pro and I'm so impressed with everything that you do. I've also been teaching health and wellness for decades. So you found me, we found each other.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm just going to share a lot of wisdom today.
For decades, right? You just said it. And that's plural. That's
How
not
good do
just
I
one.
look for 72?
Listen, if you're 72, we're going to have a whole different podcast
No,
now.
I'm 52.
All
So,
right.
I mean, I love to throw that out there. A lot of people are like, but you know, you must have done stuff. I'm 100% organic and I'm so proud of it right now. So,
No, you look amazing for 52.
I mean, that was just I wanted you to give me a compliment.
Yeah.
And I think,
I could give you more if you want.
thank you.
Yeah.
And you look fantastic too. And the thing is, we were talking before off camera about people who really walk their talk.
Right.
I think it's important to own your age. It's just, I'm not about ageism at all. And I think that, you know, I'm known for becoming ageless. And agelessness is this eternal you, mind, body, spirit, being free in the mind and allowing epigenetics to create. And this is it. This is epigenetics in front of you.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. And listen, being part of it for 2 decades, you've had to
3.
see 3 decades. Okay. 3 decades. There you go. A lot more than me. There you go. You've seen a lot of change, right? So I want to talk a little bit about the changes that you've seen from back home in Australia versus, you know, where we're at today.
Yeah, look, what I've seen, because the wellness revolution is in full swing right now.
Right.
But it kind of always was when I started back in Australia, had a wellness practice, was working in Australia's very first health retreat called Camp Eden when I was 19, fresh out of school. And then after that, we saw others spring up everywhere. And they didn't have, you know, the real stuff, the meat and potatoes, which was, and pardon the pun if anybody is a vegan, but they didn't have, you know, the fundamental, which was really freeing your mind and having the emotional component that comes with doing X, Y, and Z activity when it comes to wellness, because the two really are interconnected. So a lot of retreats or wellness businesses have now opened up and they've forgotten about the connection of the mind, body, spirit. They're just talking about do this one thing, do this, you know, X, Y, and Z therapy or this new gadget or this new pill, which is still a natural one, but it's still another pill. And in the end, we end up practicing allopathy or the medical model naturally because allopathy is mechanism. It's mechanistic in its approach. It's not holistic in its approach the way wellness is. So we're still practicing medicine, but naturally because you're not acknowledging that everything is
And
connected.
this is in Australia.
And now here too.
Yeah.
And
So in Australia, let me ask you this. So in Australia, how are people when it comes to health and wellness? Is it like over here in the United States, it's become a huge movement. Like
yes,
from the food you eat to where you're working out, the different exercises. There's a lot of fad stuff.
yes.
How is it in Australia? Do people actually welcome the health and wellness?
Yeah, well, to be fair and to your point, to sort of complete what I was saying, it needs to be multifactorial. It's never
Right.
just one thing, right? So
Right.
that's the first thing. Then it needs to be proactive rather than reactive. And in Australia, we're not too dissimilar to America in that, we do eat a lot of artificial X, Y, and Z. There are a lot of fillers in our foods. We still have myths and misconceptions around certain healing modalities like chiropractic, which is natural, scientific, and extremely effective in
Right.
allowing the body to heal itself. I won an award in 2009 by the Australian Chiropractors Association for my dedication to the profession in public education and helping people
Nice.
to understand what, it really is. And so, yeah, the only thing that I think is different in Australia is that we do have, well, it's not that great everywhere, but we do have sort of cleaner water, cleaner air, cleaner beaches and things like that. I've seen a lot of pollution and corruption go on here,
Yeah, yeah.
and
Especially in the more populated areas, like the cities.
but there's just a lot more people here, and now we have a new government administration that are very health focused. So I'm excited.
How is the medical system in Australia versus like here in the United States? Like our
Yeah,
medical system here is broken, as you already know.
yeah, 100%. And I mean, what's going on in Australia is that we do have a Medicare system where the government allows you to have free access to, a lot of health care, but they are actually sort of limiting and knuckling down on certain things and treatments and operations that are ticked off on that list.
Mm.
But for the most part, we have a much better healthcare system in terms of accessing the health.
What about their approach? Are they focused on prevention, or is it just dealing with sick people?
I think whether it comes to America or Australia, I think it's really still helping the public understand that obviously prevention is cure, but early detection is not prevention,
Right.
right? So we have to really talk about being proactive rather than reactive when it
That's
comes
a
to health.
very I like that. Because I just recently did a podcast with the founder of Prenuvo, where they do the full body MRI scans,
Oh, yeah?
and their biggest thing is early detection.
Right.
But early detection is not prevention. So now it's like you got me thinking. You got prevention, early detection, and then reactive medicine, right? So, which I think they're all important in a certain way. Traditional medicine, the more of like if you cut your arm or something like that, obviously you need to go to a surgeon, to the ER.
Yeah,
Eating
where would we
vegetables,
be
yeah.
without the best drugs and surgery
Right.
and doctors, for things like that? However, I must say that there is something called iatrogenesis. So you would actually love my book, Connected, A Paradigm Shift in How We View Health, because iatrogenesis is the leading cause of death in the modern world. And then people
What is
say,
it? Well,
people
explain.
say, what is that?
Yeah, what is it?
And I said, well, how come you don't know? Because it's the leading cause of death in the modern world. And so iatrogenesis is actually hospital and medical error. And so
Oh,
it's
okay.
the right drugs at the wrong time, or the wrong drugs at the right time, or just humanistic error that happens in hospitals. Now, my point to telling you that story is that if we land up in the hands of the best doctor, the best drugs, the best hospital, we're still at a chance of having iatrogenesis.
Right. That's scary.
So that has to give you enough motivation to be proactive.
And just never be at the hospital if
Never need,
possible.
you should never need it,
Right.
right?
Right.
So this is like what I get people excited about. This is my area of expertise, understanding how the body works to heal and giving it the right environment to do that. But then more so understanding what it is that the system has created and how we can take back control of our own health by understanding how the body works to heal and how we can give the right environment to do that, because we are designed to heal. And I know that sounds like a catchphrase, but once you get into the real nitty gritty, with chiropractors call it the chiropractic philosophy, but it's not even philosophy. It's just anatomy, really, if you think about it.
Yeah.
When you understand what the body's designed to do, as you said, with that paper cut, let's say,
Right.
you have a paper cut. Do we need to do a massage? Do we need to put acupuncture in to make those cells bond and bind and create, the skin to come back together? No. The body's innate intelligence knows how to do it on its own. But
Right.
where's the signal coming from? Do you know?
Well, from your immune system would be the initial
And what's
signal.
running the immune system?
Um, that's a good question.
The
Your
nervous system?
your white blood cells are coming
The
from your
nervous system is the master controller of
Okay.
every system in the body: the immune system, the endocrine system, the reproductive system, the muscular system. The nervous system is
Right.
the conductor of the orchestra.
Right.
And so what's running the nervous system, which is our
Well,
innate?
The brain. It's central nervous
Well,
system.
the nervous system is the brain, the spinal cord, and the
Right.
nerves that branch off that. And so that entire system is the nervous system. But what is running the nervous system? Our
Well,
innate intelligence is the universal intelligence.
that's frequency.
You would love this because, I'm quite spiritual lately. And I'm not really anchoring on any one religion because I was born Jewish, but now I've been praying to Jesus even, and I've been to Agape with Michael Beckwith's Spiritual Center. I loved that church. And, I'm interested in Buddhism. I'm interested in all the religions. But what I do know is that there is something greater than us. Some people call it God. It can be an acronym, grand organized design, if you don't want to call it God. But there is something greater than us, the universal intelligence that runs our innate intelligence.
Oh,
And
I agree with that.
we get this connection going.
Do you
Hence,
believe that there's UFOs out there?
everything is possible. Everything.
Do you ever watch the shows of
No, I don't.
yeah.
I don't like to attract my. This world is what we need to focus on right now. I know there's a lot of external stuff and world and everything, and I know in context you want me to kind of acknowledge that maybe there's something else that we don't know. But we don't know, and so we kind of guess. And I think the point is to just have faith.
Right.
To have faith that we're not here alone, that there are lots of other things, people, perhaps beings, whatever, but we need to work in unity is my point.
Right.
When we do that and take care of our body and understand the synchronicity that occurs by being kind to ourselves and that energy and ripple effect onto the rest of the world and potentially universe, that's the most important thing. Because we keep seeing ourselves as separate and we're not. And I'll give you an example. When women live together, they start to synchronize their menstrual cycles, yeah? Did you know that?
I've heard about that, yeah.
So have
It
you
actually
ever...
happens here in this office. All the women in the
Exactly.
leadership, they have their menstrual cycle around the same time.
Exactly, because how we heal and how we are designed to live is to be the same, to
In unity,
synchronize.
right.
Yeah, unity, exactly. And another example is when you've seen a school of fish or a flock of birds all swimming or flying in formation. The birds, for example, will be flying in one direction and then you'll see them in this perfect triangular formation all of a sudden change direction. Does the one bird in front go, "Hey, mate, in like 400 meters, we're all going to turn left"? No. There's an innate intelligence guided by universal intelligence that allows us to want to all synchronize and be together and know that we all need to turn left together.
Right.
And it's in such harmony and choreography, it is stunning to watch.
It's a beautiful thing to watch, right? Interesting.
If you don't believe that, there was also a study, I've written about it in my book, 200
Which book?
Connected, a paradigm shift
Okay.
in how we view health. It's my favorite book. It's also on Audible. These 200 grandfather clocks were in a room and they were all ticking at different times, but within 24 hours, they started synchronizing.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
There's evidence everywhere about this subject.
So, Andy, how long have you been here in the United States?
Nearly 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So, in your professional experience, I mean, you're a public speaker, you're on TV, and you're very intertwined into the health and wellness here in the United States. I see you moving around at the events and everything else. What do you think is the true issue with America being so sick?
There has been, and this is what I love about the MAHA movement, Make America Healthy Again, is that I've been following RFK Jr.'s work in Australia since before we even had MAHA.
I mean, he's been at it for a while.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, when I had my practice or our practice, there was it's a company, well, there still is a company called Children's Health Defense. And so, with his work as being an attorney and defending people who've been injured or, it's just important.
Right.
And I guess, what's exciting now is to watch the changes that are being made and the radical transparency that's needed and bringing down corruption. And,
Would you say that corruption is the main reason why America is so sick?
And again, it's never one thing, but we have to look at who's benefiting from why they're getting sick and then work back from there.
Right.
So it's kind of like a disempowerment thing that's accidentally happened. That before you know, it's like an unhealthy relationship. Before you know it, you've felt disempowered. Perhaps your ability to think for yourself has been taken away because somebody else is making the decisions for you. And perhaps, you haven't been armed or inspired to have information, if that makes sense.
Right.
And so you become this like kept woman, right? And then I use this analogy because it is a relationship. Everything's a relationship.
Yeah.
And then how you do anything is how you do everything. So before you know it, you step back and you go, hang on a second, I've been disempowered in this whole relationship. I haven't read labels. I haven't looked at the fine print. If you think about, you've got in science cause and effect. You don't study cause, effect, and side effect.
Right.
But why are there side effects? That's not science. And then we dismiss the side effect and it's written very, very small.
Right.
And so why is it written small? And so these are the things that are important to question.
Yeah, and would you say that education is probably one of the biggest components on making people healthy?
I think, yes, because we got so excited about what modern medicine could do
Right.
that we forgot about the power of our body to be able to heal itself and what our First Nations people have been trying to teach us for centuries, like for forever,
Yeah. And I also feel like a lot of the truth is hidden, right, through government, right? When we talk about what's happening right now and what the government has put in front of us, the food pyramid and, what you should do and what you shouldn't do in regards to like exercising and physical activity, the correct information hasn't been fed to us. So when you're talking about education, I think that would be a very important part for people to take those steps. I mean, my years in the fire department, working in different areas, and you're in the areas like the low income areas where people don't get access to some of the education that people with money do.
I see.
You see the tremendous difference,
I
right?
see. Yeah. And maybe there are more manageable people or society in that way.
Right.
Maybe because the country is so populated, that's their only way of thinking. But what I see now is unity coming because RFK Jr. did that by giving up his position and joining somebody else, another candidate.
Right.
That takes a lot to do that. And call it what it is, but what I see is it's a massive display of showing what unity looks like.
Right.
I'm willing to say goodbye to this because I want to join you because I'm going to do hashtag whatever it takes. And that was my mantra when I got on a plane with my son and 2 suitcases when I left my whole life behind to continue to educate Americans
Yeah.
about health and wellness, which started, you talk about education. I mean, I've written 10 books and I'm like,
10
why?
books. That's
Why?
amazing.
Why do I keep doing it?
Yeah.
And it's every time I birth one, I'm like, I'm never doing this again. And then I get an idea for another one.
That's amazing.
But when we educate, as you say, we empower. And when the person's empowered, then they feel like they can take back control of their health, that they're not a victim of their genetic predisposition.
So let's talk about some of the books that you have here. And this is one of your most recent ones here, Treasured Chest.
Yes.
So, and this is specific about explant,
Mm-hmm.
right? I could tell you from when I was a teen, the Pamela Anderson days, and everyone's going to LA, Beverly Hills to get these breast implants. And then fast forward many years later, now you're starting to hear how people are getting sick from these,
Very sick.
breast implants. And their bodies are rejecting it, and they're
Yep.
starting to have autoimmune issues and all kinds of other issues. So what motivated you to actually put this book together?
Yeah, look, address the elephant in the room. Why on earth wouldn't a wellness expert have implants in the first place? So I had them and I removed them. I had them and it was basically because of a trauma response. Something that happened to me. I actually felt like putting a device on my chest, and this won't make sense to anyone else, so don't try and let it make sense to you. Having said that, a lot of readers were like, I resonate with this. I had trauma too, and now I realize why I did it.
What kind of trauma?
Well, I won't go there. It's heavy.
It's mental trauma?
No, something else.
Okay.
But the book addresses it if you want to take the time to sort of understand that psychology. The main point is that I had something over my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And women have been bound down with a device over their heart whether the device is on top of their heart or under the pectoral muscle. That muscle being traumatized and stretched to put the device underneath. This is, submuscular type of a surgery. And it's real trauma on top of trauma.
Right.
And then when it's there, you don't get to really acknowledge the real you, because this is another you,
Right.
So to be fair to myself, it actually empowered me in some way, shape, or form for a very short time, but it was a fake empowerment.
Mm.
And then when I started getting, and I forgot that it was there, and I started getting sick, and my diagnosing doctor said to me one day, can I consult you? She was a friend that we were both sort of co-managing clients and patients while I had the clinic, and she also had her own integrative medical clinic. She's a medical doctor too, with the area of expertise in breast implant illness and MCAS, mast cell activation syndrome. And she said, you've got it. And I was like, no, I don't. Because then I had to address the deep reason as to why I did this to myself in the first place. And I wasn't ready for it. And guess what? No one's ever ready for anything.
Right,
but
right.
you have to do it. So I did the deep work. I did a lot of kinesiology chiropractic, NET chiropractic, psychology, and I also did some hypnotherapy. And I cried rivers, Sam,
Wow.
for about a year and a half to 2 years. And one day, because I had a PTSD diagnosis, my psychologist said to me, because this was many years ago, well, listen to you sounding all positive psychology, saying this, that, and the other. And I said, yeah. But then I went home and I was like, well, why do I still feel suicidal? Why do I still feel depressed and anxious? Why is my hair still falling out? Why have I got loss of libido, dry eyes, all these laundry lists of symptoms, inflammation? And then I was like, oh, I kind of do have pain in this left side.
Oh, wow.
So I went to 6 surgeons and an MRI, and they all said, you're fine. And there was no rupture or anything detected.
So they weren't leaking or anything?
I had a fold which became a weak point, and there was a rupture.
Oh, there was?
But
Okay.
medicine isn't a perfect science. And my surgeon woke me up from the explant and said, wow, you were right. You're better than an MRI, and you've taught me a lot today. I'm going to go back and check all my patients, because the rupture was exactly where you were pinpointing it to be.
Wow.
Right on the left side.
This is the importance of understanding your body as the individual. Like, it doesn't matter what anybody else says, because what ends up happening is people start labeling you as crazy,
So this is what the women are saying. BII isn't an official diagnosis. Breast implant illness still, and it makes it difficult for a lawsuit to happen against the product manufacturer or the original implanting surgeon themselves.
Right.
And my surgeon did say he is astounded at women's intuition, because a lot of these BII sufferers, and there are millions of them hiding in online groups, in subculture kind of support groups, helping one another, because they aren't believed and they are told you're crazy. It's all in your head, and
Right.
you're just an emotional woman going through menopause and everything. But then, hey, they get them out, and there's either an entire gel bleed or a rupture. The FDA have even announced that silicone isn't inert. Think about that.
Yeah.
So what happens is the body understands that this is a foreign body within the body, and it's toxic, and it starts to wall it off. It starts to create this surrounding.
Well, it's rejecting the foreign body.
Yeah, a capsule, a scar tissue, to separate it from going into the rest of the body. But guess what? That is a part of the body. That is the system.
Right.
So the explant surgery isn't just a removal of the breast implants. It's also a much deeper, longer scar. And you've got to peel away the outside,
It's a lot of scar tissue.
Yeah, like an eggshell.
Right.
So this is called a complete capsulectomy, or an en-bloc surgery. Total capsulectomy means that you're taking away the majority of the scar tissue.
Wow.
And then that needs to be also sent off to the labs, third-party labs, to be tested for squamous cell carcinoma and anaplastic large cell lymphoma, which are the two types of new cancers. And they're finding more things every day.
Wow.
There's a surgeon I went to as a professor, and after this, it inspired him to get more data, more research. He was like, yes, breast implants are indeed the inflammatory driver, which create a cytokine storm, an inflammatory response. So it really can't be called BII anymore. It needs to have a new name, because it's an entire systemic response where the body starts to shut down, because, as you say, it's the foreign body within the body, and it's wanting to protect it.
Right.
And the way in which the body works to heal, and this is the bit that I find exciting, is that the body wants to heal through expulsion. Anything toxic, we know. If we have rotten food at a restaurant, we vomit it or it comes out the other end.
Right.
When we have other kinds of illnesses, viruses, whatever, we want to sneeze it out, cough it out into tiny particles in the air.
Right.
We can come out through another orifice like eyes, conjunctivitis, ears, through the pores of the skin, it's another orifice, rashes.
Right.
And what do? We've been taught, no, put cortisone cream in and push it back down,
Yeah.
And so instead we have to look at how is the body working to heal? Well, in this case, the toxic thing can't come out. So it starts to create what's called contracture, where it malforms. That's the only time.
So it's trying to like encapsulate these
God.
toxins in this foreign body.
It wants to push it out, but where's it going to go?
Andy, what's kind of crazy, what I'm thinking about, listening to all this, it's like in today's world, you're getting very young women doing it. In their teens, they're getting these breast implants. What's your message to these teens?
You are so beautiful just the way you are, the way God designed you, the way your smile lights up the world. I'm about to get emotional. It's like, what's the most beautiful part about us all is our heart. And I've never seen an unattractive person that smiles. It's just impossible.
Right.
You show me someone that's unattractive while they're smiling. What lights them up?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so anyone that tells you anything else, it's not true. It's
Right.
just not true.
Do you think the hard part for most people is the world that we live in with the, TV shows and the Kim Kardashians of the world? And
I've never watched an episode of that, but I can see the impact that it's had.
right.
Craziness. Now, I invite you all to create. When you're not creating, you're consuming. So I notice how I cut you off there because I don't even care what they're doing.
Right.
Because if you're watching what they're doing, you're consuming their narrative and how they want you to live. But have you considered what you're here to do in this short time on earth? The average person lives to the average age of 82, 86, let's say. That's 86 summers. How old are you now? How many summers have you got left? Very different if you live in Florida, every day is summer. But what are you going to do with that time?
Right.
And how is your quality of life? How are you impacting the world? What legacy are you leaving? And what are you creating? We're creators. We're the ultimate creators.
Yeah. I can see that. But at the same time, I feel like there's a lot of people that just don't care to be creators.
And that's because nobody said to them, that dream that you had, Sam, that is doable.
Right.
And that's what makes us sick too, because we're not living our divine purpose.
Yeah. And I say that from a different, place, like, looking at, I'm the youngest out of four, right? And looking at my two brothers and my sister, great people, hard workers, but they're just not creators. Same two parents.
I
We
know,
grew
but
up
they
together.
may be a procreator. So everything is a
Yeah.
creation process. How did that traffic signal get there? Or how did anybody design that
Right.
architectural, whatever. You don't have to be creative in the sense of being an artist,
Right.
but we are creating every day with our thoughts, and we need to continue
Yeah.
to allow that creative thought process.
Yeah, I
or-
think there's definitely different levels of that for sure. Because there's a part of me that I've always wanted to see more out of them, out of my siblings, where they have certain opportunities, and two of them they work for the company Liquid Vita, and they've been with it since the start. And I've always said it's like I'm hiring all these people, paying them really good salaries, and I'm just like, why haven't they, gone up the chain? They don't care. They're content where they're
The
at.
best thing, when I ran a practice, the best thing to do is to find out what's the highest value of that person.
Right.
What's highest on their values? Somebody might be education, somebody else might be social, emotional, family. You find out what it is that's high, and you can usually find it by looking at the person's bank statements. What you spend the most money on is what's highest on your values. But when you see what makes them tick and you act accordingly, or you reward them accordingly, what's highest on their values is when they'll be inspired to
They'll be
move.
more inspired.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that'd be good. Look at that bank account. Then you'll find all the Prime TV and Netflix.
Yeah, what are you doing with your time
I
and money?
know,
And I'll tell you who you really are.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm a wellness coach, so it's a very holistic view of who we are, what is our greater purpose or our divine purpose, and what are we doing to make sure that that happens. And a lot of the time people just tell me, I was told I was to this or to that, and it's not possible. But what if I told you that it is?
Yeah.
And that's when that person becomes alive or a light.
So as a wellness coach, right? now you're here in the United States for the
Yes.
past 3 years.
Yes.
What type of individuals are the ones that you work with?
You know, I've worked with top ears, nose, and throat surgeons, for example, and then just people who have been nurses that wanted to change their profession because they've been uninspired, of being in the sick system, and
Right.
they want to work right back from the beginning. I love the story of, there were dead fish running down this river, and the man was at the bottom of the river collecting the fish, and somebody walked past and he was saying, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm collecting these dead fish and pulling them out of the river. Why don't you get down and help me instead of like standing there questioning me? And he said, because if you walk up the top of the hill, you can see why the fish are dying in the first place.
Mm.
So, the people that I attract are people that are usually already in the health and wellness profession. However, I have attracted people who weren't and were so inspired by what I do that they decided that they needed to work health and wellness within their business, within their family,
Right.
because it's what makes them feel more well,
It has to become a part
holistically.
of their lifestyle, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And even this surgeon, he wanted to have cooking lessons with me. And it was when I used to run a cooking school for people with food intolerances and things like that. And I said to him, you know what, you only get 1 day a week. Let me find you a fit food fast company or whatever, and we'll get it delivered.
Right.
And he goes, no, he was really offended. He said, I'm signing up for another 6 weeks because since I've been working with you and working with food, I've never felt more well in my life.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
There is some science to that. Just like grounding and earthing can occur and the red blood cells do disperse when we connect like electrical charged beings that we are to the earth, that also happens when we're playing with plants
Yeah.
and nature.
Having that good energy to put into the food as well,
The
too,
plant
right?
has a nervous system.
Oh, yeah. They're alive.
Yeah, exactly. So what gives us life is eating things that are alive and touching things that are alive.
Right.
And so I always say, if you can kill it or grow it, you should eat it. Getting right back to nature, you know?
Yeah. So there's something that you talk about having energetic hygiene.
Yeah. Why do you call it energetic hygiene? What does that mean to you? Because I can't remember being directly quoted as those two words.
I don't know.
Yes. I saw that on one of the questions as we were preparing, and I was like, I wonder what he might mean.
Energy.
Energy, yeah. Look, I mean, your thoughts become things. And we all do this. We think about something and then the phone rings. Or what you think about, you bring about, and what you seek, you shall find. So try and explain those things.
Right.
You can't. But it is energy. And it, again, is something greater than us that we need to trust.
Do you meditate?
That's the one thing that I need to work on more, because I feel like I've created my own kind of meditative world, if you like, because the only time I'm really meditating is not when I'm sitting still. I'm doing it with this sort of gentle movement because I grew up as a dancer, so I love moving my body gently. It was indicative of how I even birthed and how I explanted. Like I was constantly moving my body in this primal state. And I also was, I trained Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for 2 years and started competing.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's that constant flow, that movement that the body has. It gets you in like a meditative zone. Swimmers can talk about that as well, as their breath moves into this constant meditative, this state. And so it's a state of being where I think I've developed my own meditation, because I'm not just sitting there still or lying down, but I do meditate in those moments of gentle movement. And I
Would
think,
you say that's when you have the ability to allow your mind to reset during that state?
yes,
Because, obviously meditation, you put yourself into the delta state.
Yes.
You get the beta and delta and the other different
because your
states.
mind is freer, but it needs to move to what brings you freedom, what brings you joy, what brings you peace.
Right.
So others might call it prayer, So rather than, and because I'm not a fan of labels, again, when we label something, we become it, but then that can be good as well, because the way I like to parent, for example, or train someone, you're so good, you're so clever, you're so strong, instead of like, you weak thing, what are you doing,
Right.
And so we know in even Hidden Messages in Water, that book by the Japanese writer Emoto, that when you study the water on a molecular, like cellular, you can look at it through a microscope. And when that water has been labeled like with the word love, it looks very different, like a
Oh, really?
crystallized.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
it looks
pretty
like a
cool.
snowflake or a kaleidoscope type pattern. Whereas when you've labeled that glass water jar that says hate, and I don't even like to say the word, it looks like oil that's spilt on the road. And so we are water. We are able to be affected by language. And this is really important to consider when we're using intentional language, or we look at NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. What are we creating with our language, with our words?
Right. Do you talk to your food or to your plants or anything?
What I've been doing sometimes, and I thought, am I just crazy, or, what's going on? And it's okay to be a bit different. But sometimes if there's an internal dialogue that I'm having, I've been lately just expressing it out. Do you ever do that? I'm like,
I do that in the shower.
yeah, I was
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
bathroom. I was in the
I just like
bathroom.
talk
I
to
hung up from the
myself.
phone, put it away, and then walked to the bathroom, and I sat down and I said to myself, well, that was weird. And then, well, that was really weird. And then I was like, why did I just say that twice? It was like I said
Yeah.
it to the person that was, But I think it's important to have dialogue. Instead of internalizing it, let it out.
Right.
We don't journal enough. We don't interpret our dreams enough, the subconscious.
Right.
I started off in my radio career before I turned into a television host. I was hired as a radio presenter in Australia for 4 years. And one of the first jobs they gave me was interpreting dreams, because I had done that ever since I was little.
Really? What was that like? What were you doing when you interpret?
People would call in and tell me their dream, and we would interpret it together, and it was just profound.
Really?
Yeah, it was amazing.
And
But
you
like
would learn things from the dream? And
100% dreams have symbols in them. Some dreams are very prophetic as well.
do you think the dream that the person's having is actually happening somewhere else in the universe?
Yes, and I sometimes think that the dream is our reality and this is all a dream.
Oh, gosh. My mind sometimes goes in that direction.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, it's like nothing is out of touch. It's like it can happen. And this is like when I was talking about the UFOs. And
Yeah,
like,
okay.
I believe there's potentially life elsewhere.
Yeah.
We just don't know.
There's
Yeah.
so many times I've dreamt like somebody's pregnant or something, and then the next day I'll get a phone call from that friend and I have something to tell you. And I'd
Oh,
be like,
really?
yeah, you're
Wow.
pregnant. And they're like, how did you know? Well, I dreamt it.
Wow.
So, it's not just me that's psychic. I think we all have the ability to tap in to our innate intelligence or our psychic
And get certain
wisdom,
downloads.
all of it. We've got
Yeah.
symbols, like when people pass on and they see a double rainbow or whatever, it's all that. Yeah.
That's amazing.
But on that, like, relationships and, connection, when we focus on that, we develop better relationships with ourselves first and foremost, which can create better relationships with others. That's our responsibility to
Right.
be healthy and to have better communication and self-talk, so that we can then have a ripple effect and create that with others. And so I wrote a book called #InstaLovers when the first dating apps started coming out.
That's this one here?
Yeah. And I knew that you were interested a little bit in the dating world. So I wanted to say, like, at the time that it came out, it was when we were just getting bombarded with all the dating apps and there was no kind of book or rules about it. So I was like, I'm going to write one. I researched for 4 years before I wrote it.
Oh, wow.
And I did kind of say to the people that I'd matched up with, I'd be like, and the guys would say, are you really writing a book? Is this really just research? And I'd be like, this is the truth.
Wow.
And they was, can we go on a date so I can be in the book? And I would say, honey, you're already in the book. I've been screenshotting
Oh,
every
wow.
conversation. Of
That's
course,
interesting.
some of those conversations are in there with like little cowboy emojis to hide their identity and
Right,
things
right,
like
of
that.
course.
But what I found was that what people said they wanted and what they truly wanted were two different things. It was during the time of hookup culture, and there's still a little bit of that going on, and it's okay if that's what you want to explore at that time of your life. But are you safe? Is it respectful? Those are the important conversations that we need to have as well.
Would you say it's important to love yourself first before you even bother loving someone else?
Exactly. And this is the point, like very perceptive of you. Everything comes down to self-worth, self-love.
Right.
How you treat your body, what you put in your body, what you call your body, how you allow others to treat your body. This is just, and how we do that is understanding the greater connection. It's not just us.
Right. Right.
It's our intergenerational DNA. It's something else that's running us.
So what are the top 3 things that you do for mind, body, spirit? Like, I want to know about a day in your life. Like, when you wake up in the morning, what are the things that you're doing to address mind, body, and spirit?
I usually interpret or analyze my dream if I've had one.
Do you remember most of your dreams?
Not always. If I wake up in a hurry, I don't. But if I have a dream, I'll figure it out.
Okay.
Yeah. Then I always drink room temperature, like perfect water if I can. It has to be either in a glass bottle. I know we've got this one going on here, which is something I need to deep dive into. But yeah, it's a shame that this country and most countries don't have good quality water anymore. It's been contaminated with parasites, it's
All kinds of
fluoride,
stuff. Yeah.
like all kinds of stuff. But we need to hydrate before we do anything. So many people reach for their phone and caffeine. You need to actually allow your eyes to adjust to the light. So let's talk about hormones and why we age, because that's my area of expertise. You don't need to take hormone replacement or bioidentical hormones straight away or always, because you can actually prolong that from happening if you're allowing your body to produce, its own melatonin instead of taking melatonin gummies, etc. If you allow your eyes to adjust to the sunlight in the morning after we get that huge surge of cortisol, which is considered a bad hormone release, but in this case, it's good because it gets you
In the
bounding out of bed.
first part of the morning, right?
Yeah. So this is again, how does your body work? It's doing this for a reason.
What do you think about those blue light blocking glasses?
Look, if you have a job and you have to be online at certain periods of the night, by all means, absolutely get that stuff. These are the things where we have to adapt in the modern world. It's
Right.
adapt or die. I feel my most well when I'm actually having to work on a 5G radiation phone, when my feet are plugged into the sand, while I'm doing that. If I'm going to have to get the radiation, then I need to also be plugged in, because
Right.
after a while you won't feel well.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
also then cast your eyes on somewhere further, then come back to it, then do a cat stretch, then come back to it, or put it here and look at your posture. So yeah, first thing in the morning, adjust your eyes, drink room temperature quality water. I interpret my dreams, but you might want to say what you're grateful for. But then my biggest thing about epigenetics is chiropractic. Literally taking the pressure off the brainstem, the signal, the nervous
Right.
system, and allowing the communication from brain to body to work at its optimum, because we're getting new cells every second of every day. But the cells that we're creating through the signals of the nerve may not be functioning optimally now with that regeneration that's possible.
Right.
We get told that we have to degenerate. Yes, we're slowly degenerating. You can't stop that. But the rate of degeneration,
You can control it
Yeah.
and manage it.
you can do that.
Do you do any type of diagnostic testing with your clients that you work
Sometimes,
with?
and I usually work with their health practitioner of choice because I'm not a doctor. So we work together as a team.
Okay.
But the last time I did an in-body scan for whatever that was, the person that read my results was like, whoa, you got muscle mass like a CrossFit person, and, you're 52. What's going on there? I have done weights consistently, for a couple of decades.
You work out every day?
Yeah. And, if not every day, then every second day. And it's very important to do that from the age of 30 onwards,
Right.
some kind of resistance training, because, it can prevent osteoporosis. There's no doubt about that. But these are important things to do consistently. And at the time that I thought, oh, this isn't going to make a difference because I only spent 20 minutes here today. You look back decades later and you're like, wow, I'm actually more toned than the average 52-year-old,
Yeah.
and more toned than my mum was and her mum was. So this is epigenetics.
Well, see, but you walk the life also, by eating healthy, exercising, and all
You'll
of these
never
things.
see me
Yeah.
supporting one of those junk food outlets. You will never see me in there. If somebody says, go and use the restroom there, or can you get me, I just won't even walk in.
You don't want that energy to even penetrate to your body, right?
I know what you're about.
Andy, so one of the things that I'm heavily involved with, me personally, heavily involved in is bringing health and wellness education and even a lot of the services modalities to a lot of these communities that have never had access to it. A lot of
I
the
love that for
Black
you.
and brown communities. What is something that you see that needs to change and for this to be more beneficial and effective to a lot of these underprivileged communities?
I'd love to learn more and see how I can contribute. I'm actually a brown person. I didn't even realize, my grandparents are from North Africa. But it's just so foreign to me because my mind is so pure that I don't think we're brown or black, or we're just people.
Right.
But I know that America has been so good at causing divide. And I know that that's infiltrated in certain areas, whether you're allowed to have education and things like that, which makes me so sad and mad. But, what are your thoughts about how that can happen, Sam? That's your area.
Well, obviously I'm following like RFK and a lot of the stuff that's happening in the Maha movement. And a lot of the things like, when people are on some of these government assisted programs,
Yep.
and you see the type of foods that are allowed to be purchased
Right.
with these food stamps
Yeah.
and different cards, it's I don't think it's fair that they're allowing, people to purchase things that are really bad for them. It's almost like the food companies are in on it.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact answer, but when you look at it, it's just like doesn't make
So mean.
sense, right? It's like, why wouldn't this money go to something that's going to actually be healthy for these individuals, not stuff that's going to make them sick, that then puts them through this vicious cycle that
Well,
just
what
never
I
stops.
see is a little bit of righteousness going on. Why aren't we asking more questions on what that person's going to tell you that's going to make them feel more well and serving them with that?
Right.
So as, a certified wellness coach, that's my area. You tell me what's going to make you feel more well rather than me tell you what I think you need to do. So in looking at our First Nations, again, like let's go back to what I really think is going to make a difference in the way the health continues to go. We know that we need bodily autonomy. It's our body, our choice. We know that what works for one may not work for another.
Right.
And that's important with this new government, that there are no more mandates. So I think that's the first thing, because there's no one size fits all formula,
Right.
or
I agree.
approach to. That's not how health is practiced.
No, it's not.
And I'm
It
doing
has to be personalized to the individual.
I'm doing
We all
Bill
have a
Gates.
different makeup.
I'm doing that's not how health is practiced. Bill Gates' hands. What does that mean?
Yeah.
But yes, and so that's important. But here's the thing. It starts at birth and even during pregnancy. The mother isn't encouraged to have what's called a lotus birth. A lotus birth is where you don't cut the cord straight away. You allow that pulsed, stem cell cord, blood and nutrition to continue pulsing through from mother to baby. So you wrap it in a muslin. You don't cut that, cord just yet. You allow the mother and baby to decide when they feel like detaching. And that's not up to a doctor or anyone. It's up to mum and bub. That's that new connection.
Why is it that they cut it right away?
They just want to get the job done, right? But there's also lack of education. And again, it's that supremacy of like, this is how we do it. This is what's. But if you think about how birth always was, nobody came in there with scissors and did
It's
it
a
straight.
natural thing.
And
It's
it
the
falls
most
away.
natural. We're the only living things that go to an actual hospital to
Right.
give birth.
Right.
Everything
It's
else is,
miraculous.
just does it in nature. I mean, you
And
see
so-
a dog that gives birth and they'll just eat the amniotic sac and all that. They'll just eat it off of the puppy.
Natural,
Natural.
innate.
Right.
Innate. So then what happens after that is they get separated. Sometimes if there's intervention or, and this is also damaging for the milk supply, the hormones, all these different things. It makes the
Right.
woman go into postnatal depression mode. The baby starts to shut down. I see a lot of what's called emotionally unavailable babies when they've been control cried. And so this is the biggest thing that needs to change right now, is that helping parents to understand that there should be no controlled cried or cry it out practices. I can't even get those words out of my mouth. It just feels so barbaric to put a child in another room, close the door and say, from 7 till 7, this is my time now. What? Now, the baby's brain, a human brain, is in 3 parts: mammalian, reptilian, and the rational part of the brain. And those 3 parts of the brain in a human brain aren't fully integrated. They don't become one brain until about the age of 5 or 7, which is why there's that saying, you show me the boy until he is 7 and then I'll show you the man. And so that's when neurological development is really happening. If you're allowing a baby to go into this heightened cortisol state, crying for you, and not understanding why its basic needs aren't met, even if it's just a hug, what a naughty baby from wanting to hug you. You know what I'm saying? And hey, what if there were mutual benefits in the hug?
Right.
Which there are, and I'll tell you what they are: heartbeats, breathing, and body temperature. That's when both parties fall asleep, when their heartbeats start to synchronize, which is why when adults are spooning, they fall asleep together at the same time when their heartbeats and breathing are synchronized.
That's pretty cool.
It's so beautiful and it's so healthy.
Yeah.
So I think the way in which we come into this world says a lot about who we are. and then we're forced with the vitamin K, and then we're separated, and we're cut the cord, and we're in these bright rooms, and then we have potential breastfeeding issues, attachment issues, sleep issues, on and on and on in this drug merry-go-round.
How did you end up giving birth to your son?
I had a natural birth. I
In
had
the
a
water?
beautiful birthing experience. It was going to be a water birth. I tried and I was like, get me out of here. I don't know. And I was in a primal state. And, I used chiropractic before, during, after,
Right.
There's a Webster technique that you can do that allows, if the body wants it to turn the baby so it's in a position that it wants to come out. Those sorts of things can help. I had used a TENS machine for part of the time, but I had a very empowered birth and a midwife that was working until her late 80s.
Nice.
And she kept saying, this is the last birth I'm ever going to do, and she'd be the kind of person where, Jan Ireland, bless her, she said, there were these obstetricians that she would sometimes work with, even though we had my child in, a birthing center. Sometimes she would get called in also as the midwife to do the, obstetrician kind of a birth as well,
Right.
just to be there. But they'd come in and say, hey, she's not pushing the baby out yet. We've got to get a move on. And they'd walk out. And as they walk out, she said she'd knock over the tray and all the sterilized equipment would fall. And it would buy her time for them to have to go and clean that up again. And then whilst all the people were gone, she would say to the mum, right, we got to do this. Are you ready now? Push with me, because, there's just too much intervention these days. With birth. And to be fair, it's because they do want to save a possible, death or a litigation, but it's just gone to an extreme now where our natural birthright to birth naturally has kind of been taken away.
That's been taken away.
Yeah.
It's a form of control as well, too. Andy, with everything that's happening right now with health and wellness, we were talking earlier about how, it's expanding so quickly and just random people are getting into the health and wellness space just to capitalize on it. What is one fad that you just see that's just happening out there that people have to watch out for?
Oh, gosh.
Or any fad, that you've seen in your time being, 3 decades, right?
Yeah.
That you've seen some of these fads with food and exercising and all kinds of stuff that pop up that you have to warn some of these listeners that are out there right
I think
now.
the biggest lie and fad is calories, honestly, counting calories. I
Right.
mean, I know that it works with dietetics if you're in a hospital and there's a situation, but at the end of the day, it's not our calories, it's the type of calories. There's macronutrition, which is, large, the fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. And there's micronutrition for those who are just still understanding, and this is basic information, but those are the vitamins and minerals. The vitamins and minerals, micro meaning small, those are the things that we need to feel well and
Right.
satiate our brain on a nutritional level. It's not the, quantity, and it's not the calories, it's the type of calories. So we need a combination of micro and macronutrition and eat whole foods, not the whole donut, but the whole food, the way God designed for us to
Right.
eat that food, because that works in concert with each other. It's the way we're designed to eat that whole food. But when we start separating it and processing it and putting it through a process, because
Right.
processed food, I'm a lover of language being an author, it's the derivative of processed food is processed. It's been through a process. So take
Right.
sugar, for example. What process has it been through? What does it start out as?
Right.
What you tell me what sugar started out
Well, it
as?
depends where the sugar is coming from.
Well,
Let's say cane sugar.
there you go.
Right.
So smart man. So the cane sugar, right? I remember my mum, we would be in far north Queensland in Australia. She would see the sugar cane fields in Townsville, and we'd jump out of the car and she'd be so happy she was born in Israel. And she must have, it reminded her of perhaps there. And she would grab a piece of sugar cane and chew on it, and she would be so satiated and happy. Did she eat the whole sugar cane field? Was it addictive? No.
Right.
And I'll tell you why. That sugar cane, the real whole food source, has what else in it?
Water?
Yes. You're a smart man. Have you written my books?
No,
So-
I've had sugar cane.
There you go. It has a lot
You go
of
back
water.
to Dominican Republic and they actually put it through the little
Right.
manual machine, to get the
So
cane
real
juice.
food has water. What's the percentage of water? Plants have about 80% water. So too is the earth, and so too is us. We are all 80% water. Wow. Look at that connection right there.
Wow.
This is big idea stuff. This will help you again to feel connected. It has water. So the first thing in the process of stripping that food of its micronutrition is removing the water, making it more concentrated and making it more addictive. Then they go and bleach it.
Right.
You're literally bleaching it. You're turning it from brown to white. And then you're taking away the fiber, all of the
All that other
micronutrition.
stuff.
Exactly.
So
And
your body
that's-
now doesn't even have to break it down, so it's hitting your system a lot.
So Sam, it's
quicker
not
and-
food.
yeah,
it's
not
not
food.
sugar is no longer food. I look at that white powdery stuff and I go, you're not food, you're a chemical.
Right. Ain't
So we
that
have to
something?
kind of go. So you ask me, what's the big lie? I walk into like one of those fuel stations or whatever, and I just see all the packaged things,
Oh,
and
God.
I go, ha ha,
that's
you're not
poison.
going to get me. You're like lying to me, or with all your marketing.
I'm scared to just grab a bottle of water when I go in there. You know?
in plastic that's been
Right.
sitting there for how long?
Exactly.
Yeah.
In the heat, especially here in Florida. Isn't that something? So, all right. So, Andy, as we wrap up here, if there's somebody listening to the podcast today and they resonate with your message, what is one thing that you can really leave them with?
Oh, think about the one thing that resonated with you the most. And let's expand on that, because whatever excites you is the thing that you're supposed to move towards first. Because a lot of people listen to what I have to share and they go, oh no, I can't do all of that. Now I'm going to change my pillow. Now I'm going to go see a chiropractor. Now I got to go read this. And I got to just pick one thing at a time.
One step at a time.
One
right?
step at a time. I was never this person straight away when I first started digesting wellness concepts. And I also resisted. I resisted getting off the contraceptive pill, which is a whole nother subject.
That's a big subject.
Huge subject. You know, when they gave the OCP a go, before they brought it out, I was privy to witnessing some American medical journals, the AMA, some old ones. And this person that had hold of it, the peers sent to each other, we're going to release this OCP. You can't do that, they said. It's going to cause a whole lot of hormonal issues, they said in the following journal. And then they retorted back and said, oh, that's okay. We already have another drug for that, the
Wow.
HRT. So when they designed the OCP, they also designed the HRT to be released 20 years later. So they already knew they would need a hormone replacement therapy drug.
Wow.
But when you're listening to all of this in your inner life, let's say, and you're like, I can't give up this or do that, I just say one thing at a time, you know?
Right.
And then it'll be a snowball effect.
I love it. Andy, what's the next big thing for you?
I'm moving into the space of creating a documentary based on my last book. And I just feel this compelling calling and mission to continue to serve through the, I guess, conduit for many other subjects of the impossible beauty standards and the control of who's really in control. That's one of the favorite subjects and chapter titles in my book, Treasured
Nice.
Chest. Look at who's really in control and take back, you know, your personal power. And so moving into the documentary space, living in Beverly Thrills, it just became inevitable. I'm working with fantastic producers and the like, and hopefully you'll get to devour my information, not just on Audible and reading books, but like in a film soon.
Amazing. Where can people find you?
Yeah, you can. I'm spending my most time on Instagram, so Andy
The gram.
Lew, yeah, ANDI.LEW. Please slide into my DMs. I'll never ghost you. Ghosting is boo sheet.
And we're going to include all those links down here for people to be able to just click away and be able to follow you and everything. So,
For sure.
Andy, this was amazing. So I appreciate you coming on the podcast, sharing this powerful information. And we'll be seeing each other at all these events and all this other great
We
stuff.
sure will. We're going to be doing lots of stuff.
Yeah,
This
a
is
lot
just
of-
the beginning.
And that's the thing. It's all about collaboration as well, too. You know, and
Yeah.
elevating. So,
Yeah, help each other for greater good.
Andy, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sam.
Guys, remember, who's in control? It's you. You have to take control of your health. Andy said it very, very powerful. She said it correct. Make sure you tap in, follow her, subscribe to the podcast here if you haven't done so. Make sure you share, like, do all that fun stuff, and we'll see you for the next one.